If you've ever wondered about the plein air lifestyle, today is the day you need to listen. This is episode number 238 with plein air painters Suzie Baker, Michele Byrne, Jane Hunt, and Christine Lashley. And why are they all together? Hang in there. You're going to find out in just a minute.
This is the Plein Air Podcast with Eric Rhoads, publisher and founder of Plein Air Magazine. In the Plein Air Podcast, we cover the world of outdoor painting. Called Plein Air, the French coined the term, which means open air or outdoors. The French pronounce it plein air. Others say plein air. No matter how you say it, there is a huge movement of artists around the world who are going outdoors to paint. And this show is about that movement. Now, here's your host, author, publisher, and painter, Eric Rhoads.
Welcome to the Plein Air Podcast. We have people tuning in from over 90 countries, literally over 1 million people now. It's just pretty darn incredible that plein air is taking on such a movement, and it is a movement. Today, we're going to learn about that movement. We're going to tell you some things that you maybe haven't thought about yet. We've got a group of guests you're going to learn from in just a minute. This has not been a big week for me for painting. I was just telling the ladies that are my guests, we were talking before the show, and it's like, it's been raining. There just hasn't been much painting going on, and we're kind of in the last minute preparation phases. All week we were for Watercolor Live, which is going on now. And Watercolor Live is an online conference that we do annually. This is the third annual one, and we're right in the middle of it. So I kind of slipped away to be able to do this podcast. But the next online conference coming up is actually called Plein Air Live. And that one is very specifically for you. It does cover watercolor. It covers pastel, oil, gouache, etc. But it's all about landscape painting and oftentimes landscape painting outside. Now, I could call it landscape painting live, and you'd be perfectly happy with that too, because not everybody wants to go outdoors. But once you get out there and experience outdoor painting, it is an incredible experience, and it'll make your work so much better. So anyway, you should check that out. Now, our next big conference coming up is the Plein Air Convention, which is a kind of like a big party. Now, we don't go there just to party, but it kind of happens. Plein Air Convention is going to be in Colorado, and last time we held it in Colorado, we had to cancel, but we were like minutes away from being sold out. So I think that'll happen again, especially because we announced at the beginning of this week that our celebrity guest is film actress, television actress Jane Seymour, who is also a painter. And Jane is going to be joining us on stage at the Plein Air Convention, receiving a special award, but also going to be out there painting with us. And so you're going to have a chance. If you're a VIP member, you actually are going to get guaranteed to get your photograph with her. Others, you're kind of on your own and up to whether or not she's up to it, because I know she doesn't want to get blasted with people, but she's going to be part of the family. And I think that's pretty cool. So this is the time to come. If you're going to come anytime, this is the Plein Air to come. And also, the reason we're doing this is because it's our 10-year anniversary, and we have all kinds of things that are going to be fun that are planned. And so you want to make sure that you join us for the Plein Air Convention, which is kind of like the big enchilada, I would say. Now, today, my guests are 4 incredible painters: Suzie Baker, Michele Byrne, Jane Hunt, and Christine Lashley. They took a trip to Paris together in September of 22 to paint together. And I really felt like this is something that we should talk about, because really plein air painting is all about community. And these people are the best at making these kind of things happen. So let's welcome all of our guests. If we can get them all on here one at a time. It's going to be a big group today. If you're watching on video, you'll actually be able to see what people's faces look like. But if you're on audio, you're just going to hear the voices. So for the voice people, I'm going to start out by introducing one at a time. And what I would like each of you to do is give me a bullet point or two about yourself as a painter. I'm going to start with Christine Lashley.
Hi, Eric. Thanks for having us on. I'm a US-based artist, and I just love painting light in the landscape, and Paris is a natural fit, so couldn't wait to go.
And Christine has a couple of videos out with Streamline Paint Tube as well. So next we have Jane Hunt. Jane, where are you calling from today?
Hi, everyone. I'm in Boulder, Colorado. So I'm looking forward to you all coming to Denver for PACE. I hope to see you all there. And I paint plein air quite a lot out here and work on larger studio pieces too.
All right. Excellent. Next is Michele Byrne. And you're
Hello,
in
Eric.
Santa Fe, Michele, right?
Yes, I'm in Santa Fe. It's very cold today, so I won't be doing any plein air painting for a couple weeks probably. But yeah, I live in Santa Fe. I love it. And I'm mostly a palette knife painter, and I love Paris. I've been going there since I was 23, so it was really exciting.
Oh, good. And we also have videos out with Michele on palette knife painting and some other things. And last but not least, we have Suzie Baker. Suzie, welcome.
Hi. So I am a plein air painter, among other things, and I do lots of plein air events every year. But I started traveling with friends as sort of one of the first plein air outlets before I knew events existed back in like 2008. So I think that's what we're going to be talking about today, is why you should do it too.
Absolutely. But before we get into the trip, because I'm really curious about it, what I'd like each of you to do is to just give me a couple of bullet points on, for the people who are listening, who might be painters but not plein air painters, or maybe they want to become plein air painters, they maybe haven't painted at all. Talk about the benefits of plein air painting, not only from a lifestyle standpoint, but from a painting standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Who wants to go?
I'll go first. Plein air painting is just everything. And even if you only capture just a few dots of color, or something about the excitement that translates to being on location. And it's a really great way to be more mindful of letting go of expectations, because you're there, you're present, and you're going to see what happens. And I think that's why plein air is just so important to keep practicing at and just have fun with.
All right. Who's next?
Yeah.
Jane?
Well, I couldn't have said it much better than that. I completely agree. And in fact, what I got to do in Paris, which I usually don't when I'm in competitions or teaching, was just I divide my canvas into like 2, 4, even 9 at one point, and paint tiny little color studies. And I think I learned so much more by doing that than worrying about a finished painting or competing or any of that. So it was a great experience on every single level.
Suzie, curious, do you have people walk up to you when you're out painting and make commentary about your paintings? And does that make you nervous? And how should people who experience that deal with that?
It doesn't make me nervous. I'm an extrovert, so I think that that's one of the fun things about being a plein air painter. If that really hinders you as you are out painting, just secret yourself away somewhere so that you can avoid that. And then to your point about why we should be out painting, I majored in advertising and fine arts at Louisiana Tech University, and we never painted from photographs. If we were painting the figure, there was a model. If we were painting a still life, there was a setup. If we were learning to paint the landscape, we were outdoors. We didn't call it plein air painting, we just called it painting. And viewing, since the invention of oil paint and tubes, we have been able to take our studios outdoors and observe from life. So definitely you should do it if you're an introvert and it makes you uncomfortable. Just find that sort of private place.
All right. Michele, what about you? What would you say the benefits of painting are that these ladies haven't touched on?
I think when you're out painting, you see colors that you can't see in a photograph. Like if you take a photograph, the darks get really dark and you can't see the colors. But when you're out painting, you can see more color. Plus, for me personally, since I paint figures, they get so much more action and lively. And a lot of times I can't paint my figures in the studio like I can outside. I don't know, there's something about the excitement and the energy of the moment and being there that just makes things happen that don't happen in the studio. So I really enjoy plein air painting for that reason.
All right. So I'm going to throw this out to the crowd. Who was the one that came up with the idea of this trip to Paris?
We actually spent some time discussing that because I think it was several years in the making for this trip. And then we had an attempt at where we're like, yeah, we're going to do it. And then it all fell apart. So I think it took about 3 years to plan this.
May have
And
had something to do with COVID getting in the way.
Yes and no. We were trying to make it work with some workshops that each of us had happening before or after. And in the end, we just made a commitment to travel together. And that was the way to do it, not piggyback on something else. And so I think actually what started the whole thing is, as some of the other people mentioned, we enjoy painting together, whether it's at a plein air event or I've had a trip where it was painting just for pleasure with friends. Suzie said she has. I know all of us have done that in the past, and it feels special and it feels really great. And that's what made it happen, because if you're going to do all of that and meet up with friends, I mean, again, why not do Paris? So
Jane, where did you all first get acquainted with one another and develop your friendships?
That's actually a really good question. Various plein air events, I think. Suzie and I have traveled together a lot. We've roomed together all over the place. And Michele and Christine, this was my first time really traveling with them, although I knew I loved spending time with them and painting with them. So yeah, it just, it actually was fortuitous because we did end up, I think Michele, Christine, and I were all going to be in Europe anyway, and we were all teaching over there. So we just sort of met up, and then Suzie came over just to meet with us. So it worked out pretty well.
So who wants to just give me an overview of the trip and what you did on a day-to-day basis?
Wait,
Anybody?
Eric, I have to say where I met Jane the first
Oh.
time. So I heard her interview on a Plein Air podcast. And then I went to the Plein Air convention, and I'm sitting next to her at a big dinner. I forget, Jane, where were we? Do you remember what? I can't even remember what town it was because they all kind of run together for me now. But we sat next to each other and we've been friends, like just fast friends ever since.
Well, I'm glad to have accommodated.
You made a love connection, Eric.
You did. I have to say,
I don't know if you guys ever heard the story, but we have these orientations at the Plein Air convention. You've probably attended them, but we try to get the newbies in a room and put them together with other groups so they have somebody to hang out with if they don't know anybody, which is helpful. And one group ended up hanging out with another group, and two people in that group met and started dating, and then a year later got married.
oh my gosh, that's
No
great.
names.
Great.
No names.
Well,
That's-
our story isn't that good, is it, Jane?
well, we had time. You never know, Suzie.
So tell me a little bit about, you had how many days and what did you do every day? Obviously you painted, but did you do any museums, any touring?
Yeah. I'll start here. Yes, we did about 6 days, I believe, 7, including travel. And we went to the Orsay. We decided ahead of time areas where we wanted to spend some time painting. So the Tuileries, the Louvre. We also went to the Musée d'Orsay, where Monet's paintings can be seen in the round for his water lilies. Just very amazing. And we also made time for something that I might not have put on my agenda, but Suzie's a fantastic figurative painter. I think we all do figures in some type of fashion, but she put out the idea of going to Académie de la Grande Chaumière, which is a studio that offers life model drawing. And so we spent an afternoon drawing from life from the model, and it was fantastic. And the days were spent, typically we do try to do like a morning painting and then an afternoon session and hopefully work through lunch. But I think that there were maybe 2 times when we broke off into groups of 2, and definitely made time for a lot of eating, whether it was grab and go or not. Yeah, Suzie or Michele, why don't you talk about your gluten-free bonanza that you guys had? Because you guys made a special trip to the bakery.
Oh yeah, that was a highlight because Suzie had researched where they had gluten-free food in Paris, which isn't very many places. And there was a place called Copain, I think it was, and it was across the Seine, and it was a bit of a walk. And we walked over there for lunch one day, and it was just so exciting to hold, because we're both gluten-free, to hold a sandwich and eat it. So I think we each had a sandwich, a coffee, and a chocolate eclair or something. So it was really exciting. Yeah.
So
I have been gluten-free my entire life. My mother figured it out when I was an infant, and that I had celiac. And so I had my first ever croissant in my whole life. And I told Jane I was going to do that, and she made me wait until she arrived sort of a day later. She made me wait until she got there so she could see it. Unfortunately, it did not quite meet expectations, but the other things, just being able to put a whole eclair in my mouth or a sandwich was a very unique. I hate to talk about food so much, but it was Paris. So.
Well, you are in Paris. You have to talk about food if you're in Paris. Well, did you have any run-ins, if you will, with the locals? Anybody commenting on your?
Well,
Suzie and I,
yes, Suzie and I did actually. We were painting under a bridge, and it was raining, so we had tarps set up, and we were hiding under the tarp. And then a couple of homeless guys thought we were, part of their crew. And my French is okay, but not great. So I had to explain that we were Americans, and then they were like, American painters, and then they weren't interested. But yeah, so we actually briefly got mistaken for locals. That was exciting.
That is exciting.
Local homeless people, yeah, which I understand is not an unusual situation for plein air painters to be mistaken. Nancy Tankersley has a really great story about, So the tarp on my head, we fit the bill. So.
Well, Eric, I have to say too that that was a funny story that happened to you guys, and there were moments when we were very aware of our surroundings and we were trying to be mindful of that. But I would say overall, a big surprise for me was that most people were saying things like, "Thank you for coming back. We love artists painting our city. We haven't seen artists for 3 years because of COVID. It's so nice to see artists coming back." And then most people, here's the thing, Eric, we found that painting in a group, we felt a lot more secure. And it was beyond just the buddy system. It was basically, we felt like as a collective, people didn't bother us as much. And that was just really great because Paris, has small sidewalks. It's not like we're in the countryside and we can hide behind a tree or something. But most people left us alone. And if people came up to us, they were just very positive, very positive.
I was painting on the corner by the bridge at Notre Dame Cathedral, and there were these teenagers. There's a small group of 6 or 7 teenagers, and they're laughing a lot and they're smoking. And then the one came up to me and he said, in his French accent, he said, "Sir, you really should give up painting. It's not very good."
Oh, that's not nice.
Oh my gosh.
But I'll never forget it. And I said what we all say. Well, come back in an hour.
Right, exactly.
They didn't come back, and it wasn't very good. So anyway, but the joy of painting outdoors in general is so wonderful. And then to be in a place like that, what is your best encouragement to others to try this if they've never traveled to plein air, put together a group or whatever?
Suzie?
I would say find good friends that are interested in art. Like, you really need to all be like-minded in that regard. And, it doesn't have to be Paris. You can get a group of 3 of your painting buddies and go to Santa Fe or go to some campground close by. And when that is all that you're doing for a week, and you're sharing groceries, you're sharing transportation, you're sharing accommodations, you can pretty inexpensively do a trip where the goal is to paint, to get up in the morning, paint, have a quick lunch, paint. Maybe you add some art museum or something, but the goal, and if you don't bring your spouse, then it's like 50% off of a vacation. Sorry for the
Well,
spouse.
and you also don't have the pressure of feeling like you need to entertain them.
Right. And, you do want it to be somebody that you have good camaraderie with and you get along with. And, but I find that you should all be painters. Sorry?
Any fights? Any conflicts?
I don't think so.
No.
This would be a great time to air them if we did, right?
I know, that's right. On a permanent record. Well, sometimes there was a different flow. Like, there was one evening that Michele and I went out late. And I think that's another benefit of just what Suzie was saying, that there's this point where you push yourself in a good way and your friend kind of eggs you on, because I was like, yeah, Michele, let's go paint. And she's like, yeah, okay. And I think Suzie and Jane had, you guys worked through lunch or something. There was something going on that, they had a painting they wanted to finish. So anyway, Michele and I stayed up and I think we painted until like 11 or something like that. But that's the point, is that it just pushed us. I wouldn't have done that if I was by myself. But because I'd made a promise to Michele to show up, I did. And she was like, oh, well, are we going to do this? And then afterwards we were like, oh, that was awesome. Yes. Oh my gosh, that was so great. And we were pumped because we did it. And we had solidarity.
You would have done it if you had a partner or spouse with you, because you would have felt obligated to go to dinner with them or something. And
totally.
That's what I find on my trips. I oftentimes take vacation and go painting, but it's kind of like, okay, you got 3 hours and then I'll meet you here. And so, you feel this pressure, but there's no pressure in a situation like that. So you stayed in an Airbnb together. Where did you stay?
We stayed at a hotel in the 6th arrondissement. We wanted to be close to the Seine, and there's a lot of good places there. We just have to think of it as a place to sleep, because mostly it was going to be all about painting.
Yeah. And your weather was great?
Well, it did rain like many times.
Yeah.
We would set up and like paint 45 minutes, and then it started raining. Then you had to pack up. But it always seemed to rain when I was just about finished with the painting. So for the most part, it was pretty good, though, I would say.
And you got that awesome painting behind you from there.
That's right.
It looks like you do too.
And one thing I want to add is that what Christine was saying about it pushes you, because unlike the other 3, Christine and Jane and Suzie, they all are still doing a lot of plein air events, and I kind of stopped doing them for a while. And I think I got into lazy mode. I don't know, but I wasn't used to doing 2 or 3 or 4 paintings a day, and they really pushed me, which was good, because one day Christine and I did one in the morning. We did one at lunch at a cafe where the waiters were bringing us wine and creme brulee. And then we did a 3rd one. And then I was exhausted. And I get back to the room and they all go, we're going to go paint a night paint on the bridge. And I was like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. But I went and I did it. And it was like so much fun. And it really did push me. So it was good in that respect. And I think when you're with other artists, they just push you to paint, because there's always someone that wants to paint more, and then you don't want to miss out. So,
well, you've been to the Adirondacks. You know what that experience is like. We oftentimes push people into doing their first nocturne painting. We're going to go out whether you go or not, and so some people, that it just helps them. And then once they've experienced it, they want to do it more. But it's that first time getting out and doing something like that that's a little bit difficult. So what were some of the other benefits of the trip for you? Obviously, it deepened your friendships.
Yeah, it did. Well, I basically have been working larger from studies. I've been trying to be mindful of my values and working on, I've just been kind of chaotic in the past about, oh, I'll start a big painting. So I'm trying to be more methodical and work up small studies going to bigger studies. So I'm trying to use that experience to tap into what happened there and the observations that I learned while I was there that week.
So the big piece that you have behind you, for those who are watching on video, that was related
Yeah.
to a small study. I don't know if the small study is in your view or not.
Yep, it is. It's here.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right. Terrific.
Yeah.
So
So
what do you find? I think that's a whole nother podcast in itself, but what do you find the challenges are taking a small study and then blowing it up 3 or 4x?
well, it felt very mechanical for me, and I didn't want to do it. And Michele, who's such a loose painter, that's the thing, is we learned from each other. Michelle's a very loose painter, and I saw her working out a grid system, and she's talking about not only the golden mean, but her, what's the grid system that you're using? Dynamic symmetry.
Dynamic symmetry, yeah.
Yeah. And so we talked about that, and I got to paint side by side with these other wonderful artists that I went with. And I was like, wow, I'm going to revisit my old prejudice that I shouldn't blow up a study as a literal thing. And I remember Michele talking about creating large paintings and Jane working on her mini studies. So I'm going on here, but I learned a lot in that regard about studies. So I'm trying to use that in the studio, Eric.
Are any of the others doing that, taking these studies and blowing them up?
Yes, I have been. Yeah, and I want to do more too.
Okay. Now, what was your primary subject matter? Bridges and cafes?
Oh, yeah, street scenes,
Street scenes?
night scenes. We did a lot of nocturnes, actually. Pretty many.
We did, yeah.
Yeah,
we did
actually,
everything.
well, we kind of picked a location and then people focused on different stuff, like gold light on the building or something. Like what was it? You guys were painting Domago and then we were painting Cafe Floor. And so even we would be in a different location and somebody would be basically looking north and somebody be looking south. Yes, those the Domago and Cafe Floor are famous cafes. I think we have some images of the cafes that we painted.
Yeah, I think every American, we go by and we say, "Oh, 2 maggots, that's so funny." And I learned what that was. And there are originally it was a curiosity shop or something like that, and the carved Asian figures that are in the restaurant Domago are the original two maggots. So it's not actually maggots for all of us dumb Americans. So there's something I took away, a little piece of trivia.
Are you planning another trip? And how are you going to deal with it when everybody else that's listening to this says, "Oh, can I go?"
We're really encouraging them to think about it for themselves. It doesn't have to be us. It doesn't have to be Paris. It doesn't have to be a place where you're having to spend a couple hundred nights on a room. A couple $100 on a room. It can be more reasonable, but we're talking now when everybody is sort of huddled in their studios because it's cold outside, or Eric in our case rainy, and you could be thinking about your summer travels and who are some buddies that you'd like to approach and say, "Hey, what would you think about using all of these miles, these airline miles that we haven't been able to use for the last few years, and taking a trip somewhere," and just starting that conversation and dialogue. And I think one of the benefits of it we weren't painting for a show, though some of us did put pieces in a show, and we weren't painting for a competition, but we were just painting to learn. And experiment and learn from the easel next to you with what Jane or Christine is doing with there. And we're having conversations about light and how the light looks on those buildings, and how to interpret them. And we're trying new things. We went to the Sennelier store. Jane and I went in there, and I picked up a bunch of oil pastels, and I tried those for the first time as a drawing. So when you don't have this reason, like I have to paint something that goes into a frame that goes to a show, but you're giving yourself permission to just experiment, then you're really learning more than if it's always meeting a deadline or meeting the expectations of a client.
Mhm.
Takes the pressure off. I had the pleasure, I live in the Adirondacks in the summertime, and I had a similar experience, but it wasn't Paris. It was the Adirondacks. They had 4 painters come up, and we just painted together we didn't have a week. We had, like a 4-day weekend, but something good came out of it. And that was that we developed deeper friendships. We learned from one another. I think we all became better painters as a result of it. And I think what you've done, I think we should challenge everybody who's listening, if you're a plein air painter, to try and figure out how to do something on your own. Put together a group. It doesn't have to be Paris, it could be anywhere.
Mhm.
And you will benefit from it. And pick people that you feel you can travel together well, so that you're not going to be bickering or fighting over where you're going to paint. I think it worked out. It's because you had kind of little clusters, right? 2 and 2, but sometimes you all painted together.
Most of the
We
time
did.
we do together. Yeah.
You did.
One other thing I would add to the trip idea that we kind of figured out recently is I've been doing this for a while with various groups. Yeah, us as a group, we're probably going to do another European destination, but sometimes we'll do something simpler. Like, for example, Suzie and I are doing the Catalina Wildside shows. So we are going to show up, I think in March, right, Suzie? We're going to show up a couple of days early and do a thing. So what we sometimes will do is if we have an event, we will put something on the front or the back end of that, even just for a couple of days, so we have extra painting time. So that's another way to do that. Like if you're coming to Pace or something, you could put a couple of days on the front or back end of that. It's a way to just make it logistically easier, I think.
Well, especially because of our last day is in Estes Park at the Rocky Mountain National Park. You could spend a month painting there. So if you wanted to come to the convention and then tag on and hang out there for a few days painting, that would be a wonderful opportunity.
It's true. It's right there. I can almost see it.
Eric,
Yeah,
I want to say something about make sure you make time for yourself. I've heard comments of, oh, you're so lucky you got to do that. And yes, we feel very fortunate we got to do that, but we really carved out the time. I think it's important, regardless of what level you are as a painter, to just make that time for yourself. And we just couldn't feel more strongly about that. And that's what it is, to make that time to meet up with friends. And like Jane was talking about, snag 2 days before a conference or after a plein air event. Michele and I had taken a trip to Yellowstone together previously, and we had a good time painting, but we both said, you know what, we wished we'd had more time together, just the two of us. And I think that was another reason that I knew she and the other gals would be great on our trip together. So anyway, just no excuses, make time for yourself. Even if the trip doesn't work out necessarily 100% like you planned, that's part of it too. And you'll learn something from it.
One of the things that's happening right now is there are a huge number of new painters. They've never been to a plein air event. They've never been to the plein air convention. They've probably never even been to something like Plein Air Live online. And they want to get outdoors and paint. And some of them are, there's a couple of Facebook groups devoted just to new painters and people who are doing this kind of thing. How do they develop these friendships? What's your best advice on how they can come up with people who become friends like you have?
Well, I think we all did it by doing plein air events. I mean, that's where I met everybody was doing plein air events, and you're somewhere for a week. It's different because you're in a competition, but even like here in Santa Fe, there's something called the Santa Fe Planarians, and they get together every Tuesday and paint when it's not freezing cold out. But then you just kind of hook up with people. I think no matter where you live, you can find a painting group, and if you can't find one, you could always start one. Yeah.
Mhm. And
Yeah,
I would
where
add-
I live, we have a really good art league, the Woodlands Art League and Conroe Art League, and Texas has the Outdoor Painters Society. And look in your area for what are those groups, and they're likely going to have a very vast range of capabilities, from maybe professional artists down to novice and beginners, and just make it a hurdle that you put in your path so that you're out of your house and you've got these things that you're doing. Like I know the Outdoor Painters Society will do monthly trips. So if you're in the Texas area and want to join them when they go to League City or out to Big Bend, then you're putting things in your path where you're around other like-minded individuals where you can stretch and grow. Of course, taking workshops, going to conventions. These are all things that if you put it in your path, you'll get better and better, and it'll sort of force you out of your comfort zone of being at your house and eating Cheetos and not doing painting.
Well,
Speaking
Cheetos
from
can be
experience.
pretty good. Well, I've
Bring
heard from
Cheetos with
people.
you.
I have had people who've said, I have not come to the plein air convention because I'm not good enough. I don't want to paint in front of other people. What would you say to that?
There's
I
a
would-
wide range. Somebody else, yeah.
I would address that because I am probably the most introverted of the group, and I'm going to speak to all the introverts out there. I am on the sensitivity scale. Suzie makes fun of me. She said she's an extrovert, and she is one of my very best friends, but I'm on this end and she's on this end, and so it's sort of funny. I am as introverted as you get, and I am actually holed up on the side of a mountain right now. That is what I do. But I do come off my mountain sometimes, and as an introvert, I can say we do need camaraderie. We still need camaraderie. And even so, like Eric mentioned at the convention, at first I was like, well, I don't know if I can be around 1,000 people, but it doesn't feel that way. And you get, you can kind of set it up however you want it to be. And it's the same with this, with traveling. Don't feel like because you're an introvert, because you don't like big crowds, that you shouldn't find some way to connect with other people, because it's important, especially like-minded people like this. We all need it.
Well, as you know, I've said that plein air painting is the new golf, and I didn't mean to insult plein air painting by that, but the idea that you're outdoors, you're challenged, you're getting better every time you do it. In theory, you're with friends, and you're in nature. I mean, it just doesn't get much better than that. So the opportunity to be together in painting. So I want to thank all of you for doing this today, because I think the encouragement of your trip has really helped a lot of us. I know I made a note to myself, okay, go figure out how to get a trip done. It doesn't have to be to Paris, although that would be nice. And just find some place to gather some friends together. And a good starting point for anybody, if you're not used to that, is go to your local club. Every state has one. Most communities have one. If they don't, then see if you can find a plein air event. You might not be able to paint in the event, but some events allow other painters to paint in them. Or go to, plein air convention or something like that, because you want to get used to painting around other people and with other people. I was very nervous. I'm sure a lot of people are, because you don't feel like you're good enough. And then eventually you just kind of get to the point where you don't care and you don't have to impress anybody else. And when you get to that point, it's so much better. I don't know if you folks ever did this, but I'd take a break and I'd walk around and look at everybody else's paintings. And then I'd come back and start changing things based on what they were doing. I've stopped doing that now. I don't even look at anybody else's paintings. If I'm painting, I'll wait. I'll look at them after, because I don't want to be influenced.
Yeah.
You know, Eric, another reason
I don't know
why
about
you should be with other painters is that we all know it's hard. We all know that, you know, half the time when you get started, you paint better frisbees than you paint paintings, you know, meaning you want to fling it instead of stick with it. And, you know, that sort of pain that we experience. And then the other thing is that I have found that plein air painters are probably some of the nicest people on the planet.
So
And
true.
I think it's just, if you're going to paint outdoors, you have to be able to talk to people and be friendly. And so I think if you're grumpy and moody and, you know, mean, curmudgeonly, then you're not going to be a plein air painter. So if you're thinking about getting involved, then you'll probably find that we're a pretty friendly lot of people, wouldn't you say?
I don't know, Susie, were you talking about me? Mean, introverted, curmudgeonly?
No.
You are a little bit of a curmudgeon. Not really.
I'm like Jane. I'm a total introvert. I don't want anybody talking to me. I can give a really good, you know, sideways glance. I perfected that. Like, don't
But I
mess with me.
Yeah. I want to add something to that. I know I've always been an introvert as well. And when I first started painting outside, I was scared to death. And now I find that just people admire you just because you're out there and you set up an easel on a street. People will come up before I even did anything and say, "Oh, that's beautiful." And I'm thinking, I didn't even do anything yet. But I think for me personally, being out there and painting has made me a much more sociable person, and I enjoy it now. I like when people come up and talk to me and give me their advice. Sometimes they give good advice. But anyway, I think if you just get out there and do it a couple times, you'll realize that people aren't going to come up and insult you. I mean, I've never had anyone insult me, but
Go to Paris again.
No, they were very nice, but
Okay.
I agree. I agree that it's just, you have to show up, and that made me feel proud that I just showed up and tried. And I just go back to my color dots. If I get color of the sky versus color of the building, that's the start. So I just calm down and just go way back to the basics.
I have met wonderful people that I never would have met if I had not been plein air painting. I've had people walk up and with their kids, and I try to encourage their kids to take my paintbrush and do a stroke or two just to get them excited about painting, or others who, you know, I don't know if you get this, but all the time it's like, I'd love to do this, but I don't have any talent. I can't draw a stick figure. And I'm like, here, let me show you. I don't care if they ruin my painting, because it's, you know, it's not about that anyway. It's just about the experience, and I can fix it. But I want to get people encouraged to paint. And I think, you know, we've seen hundreds of people outside painting that have probably been inspired to paint because they've looked over your shoulder and they thought, I wonder what this is. I want to try this.
Well, I think
C.K. Chesterton.
Oh, go ahead.
C.K. Chesterton said, "If it's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly." Yeah.
I just wanted to say, it doesn't have to be a point of anxiety. It could just be, I like to just think, I'm here to meditate on the moment, and I try to let the anxiety go because I'm anxious somebody might talk to me. I'm anxious the painting might not turn out. If I'm painting next to Suzie, maybe I think her start is better. But I try to let all of that go, and it's so much of a better place to be in. So for me, plein air offers that, is to just stop obsessing over stuff, especially as everybody has mentioned, there was no final deadline of stuff to exhibit, and there was no competition. So
you can play.
Just have fun.
Yeah.
I think it's very freeing, Christine, to know that you have some of those feelings when you get out there, because I think a lot of us have them. And we see somebody like you or the four of you who are accomplished painters, and we think, oh, they never go through those things. But you're going through the same things. You're just figuring out how to overcome them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking Christine's start was better. Funny you use that as an example. We're all like, oh.
Well,
no, I copied your orange for sure on that sunset painting, Suzie.
Yeah, that was funny. One night we all painted the sunset on the bridge, and it was interesting since it wasn't a competition. We could look at each other's and compare and try new things. And
Yeah.
that's what made it extra special, I think.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
That's nice. Well, thank the four of you for being on today and be willing to share about your trip. Congratulations, and congratulations on the development of your friendship. I think that's very special.
Thanks for having us, Eric.
Thank you,
All right.
Eric.
We'll see y'all at the convention.
Sounds great.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay. Well, that was fabulous. Our guests were Christine Lashley, Suzie Baker, Jane Hunt, and Michele Byrne. So thank you, the four of you. And I want to encourage everybody to get out there and try something like that. I think it's worthwhile. And if you haven't yet had the experience of going out plein air painting, please do that. Okay. So why don't we get into the marketing minute now?
This is the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads, author of the #1 Amazon bestseller, Make More Money Selling Your Art, Proven Techniques to Turn Your Passion into Profit.
In the Art Marketing Minute, my goal is to answer your questions so that you can get answers. Right. Okay. So upload your questions at artmarketing.com/questions, or you can email me, eric@artmarketing.com. Or just send me a note at Eric at Plein Air Magazine, whatever cranks your clock. Amadine, my producer from France, who probably enjoyed this segment because she probably felt like she was at home. Amadine is going to ask our first question.
The first question is from Anthony Mankey Jr. from Macomb, Michigan. I've been advertising through Facebook ads at $10 a day for a little over 2 months now with no sales. I am advertising in multiple countries. My question is, should I advertise in America only to get better results?
Well, this is a loaded question. And one of the things that happens, Anthony from Malcolm, Michigan, sorry. One of the things that happens, Anthony, is we oftentimes will pick a tactic before we pick a strategy. And a tactic is advertising on Facebook or Instagram, or advertising in a magazine, or advertising on a website, or sending a direct marketing piece. Those are tactics, but the strategy is where you need to start. You need to ask yourself, what is my primary goal for the year? What am I going to accomplish? And then once you understand that, it changes what your tactics will be. Because let's say you said, my goal for the year is to get a list of 5,000 people who are interested in taking workshops from artists. That would be one strategy. Another might be, I want to get a list of 5,000 people who are interested in my paintings. So if that were your strategy, then your Facebook ads would be all about that. It wouldn't be about trying to sell them a painting. It would be trying to get them you would be trying to sell them a click through for my free ebook on the 10 best painting tips I've ever done or ever had, or the 10 best paintings I've ever done. So then if you have the ability to build your list, then you have the ability to talk to your list more frequently because you have their emails. And then from that, you have a chance of repetition. And we all know that if you've listened to this a lot, you know that repetition sells products. So, but why did it not work? Well, first off, let me answer your question. Should you concentrate on America only to get better results? Yeah, probably. And as a matter of fact, I would concentrate, if you take your $10 a month, I would concentrate on one small area. And because that way you get an opportunity for more repetition. But let's go back and let's talk a little bit about Facebook advertising. I do a lot of Facebook advertising. I spend so much money on Facebook that when I had a problem with Facebook, they fixed it real quickly because we're a big advertiser. So I can't tell you the amount, but it's hundreds of thousands of dollars that I spend on Facebook and Instagram. I spend money on TikTok. I spend money on everything because it's important to me. But I only spend money if I'm getting a return, and a return means I'm getting at least break even, and hopefully at least one times more. In other words, a 2 to 1 on my spend. So if I spend $10, I want to get $20 back. That's not easy to accomplish, especially with a first order. And there's a lot of sophisticated technology and a lot of sophisticated algorithm and a lot of other things that get behind this that will really be important to understand if you're going to be a Facebook advertiser. In my particular case, I study this stuff all day, every day. I focus on it, I learn about it, and yet I still employ experts, either in my own company or experts outside of my company who have skill sets that I don't have, because somebody who lives in that world all day, every day might have a chance of doing better for you. Now, I have had agencies that have completely ripped me off. I've had agencies that have made me a lot of money. I've had agencies that have gotten me no progress, but their intent wasn't to rip me off. So you got to be careful about that kind of a thing. And you're in a little different world than I am because, my numbers are a lot different. But um, start with your tactic. I mean, start with your strategy and then move to your tactic. Now, there's also a lot of other things. Facebook is not working for you for probably a couple of reasons. First off, I believe that you have to have multiple impressions on something before someone will buy it. Statistically, someone needs to actually physically see something 7 times before they're willing to buy it. There are exceptions to that rule. I have seen an ad on Instagram and bought it instantly, but I've also seen things hit over and over and over and over again, and I wasn't interested. But the more times I saw them, the more I got interested. And then maybe eventually I bought something. And so that's the idea of multiple impressions. And that's true for any form of advertising, is you've got to get multiple impressions. And so if you're spending in a wide area, $10 a week or a day or whatever you're spending, you're not likely to get that concentration. So if you have a concentrated audience and you spend more in that concentrated audience, you might get more impressionism, more impressions. But it's hard to accomplish that on Facebook. It's hard to control it. Facebook works essentially on a bidding system. Whoever spends the most money to get in front of a category or a keyword is the one who is going to get seen the most. And so, right, I did a campaign the other day, and the price to get in front of someone was $100 to get in front of one person. And if I spent $10, that $10 would never get in front of them. Now, since not everybody's got to buy, I got to spend, 10 times that or 20 times that to be able to make it effective. So, if your cost to acquire a customer is $100, that's okay. The goal really is to outspend everybody else, because if you can outspend them, as long as you're getting a return on your money, then you're going to get more business. But most of us look at, or most of us should look at this as a marketing budget. How much are you willing to spend? Now, let's say you're selling a painting for $2,000, and you say to yourself, how much am I willing to sell that? How much am I willing to spend to get a $2,000 sale? Well, a typical in marketing, depending on what industry you're in, is to spend 10%. Some people spend 5%. If you're in the cosmetics industry, you might be spending 30% because you have more to spend because the cost of the product is lower. And you want to develop customers. So you might be willing to get some customers early by spending more and then turn them into secondary customers, right? Meaning sell them a second piece, a third piece. And that's the way advertising really should work anyways, is get them in on a kind of a loss leader, so to speak, something that is affordable, and get them in love with you, and then offer something else to them. And so you can get your money back that way from the second purchase or the third purchase. You spent 60 days at $10 a day, $600. It's a lot of money if it's not working. In Facebook environment and Instagram environment and probably in TikTok environment, you can actually spend 10 or 20 bucks in one 24-hour period of time and find out if people are clicking on your on your ad and responding to it. You don't have to take 2 months till you change things. And so you probably maybe threw away a little bit too much money there, where the thing that makes people click through is, do I have a compelling offer? And that means that the ad that you write has to be something that people are interested in, has to get their attention. What's the headline that's going to get their attention? If the headline is about, oh, you should see the work of Eric Rhoads artist, they're going to be like, yawn, boring. But if it says, look at the compelling images this artist is doing, then you're going to want to click through, and then you've got to try to figure out how to convert them to a sale. Typically in a Facebook environment or an Instagram environment, a low cost under $25 is the best way to get somebody to buy something. Free is even better, but then you've got to get them free. And if you have free, sometimes free people who buy under or take something free don't spend money. If you get them to something for $5, at least they're willing to spend money. Then you get them in on a $5 sale for a brief view of something, and then maybe you sell them something more. So there's a lot to all of this. Chances are it's about copy, it's about concentration. There's always problems, but focus on reinventing yourself and experiment. We sometimes will run 30 or 40 or 50 ad campaigns and they don't work, and we try to fix them fast and keep testing things till they work. Testing is always the key. I love concentrated audiences because ultimately, if I can get more repetition in front of somebody, they're more likely to want what I have to offer. And that's what it really boils down to is, you can't force anybody to want something. You can put something in front of someone and hope that they have the desire to buy it. You can't force them to buy. And so you've got to make sure that it's a group of people who are going to want to have that desire. And that's tricky. Okay, Amadine, what's our next question?
The second question is from Christina from Chicago, Illinois. How do you market your fine art online without distressing your gallery?
Well, Christina, that is a terrific question. And distressing is a really good word. So imagine this. Put yourself in their shoes for a minute. You rent a space, a beautiful storefront in a nice part of the community. You have it remodeled, you put lights in, you have it lit, you make arrangements with 20, 30, 40 top artists. You get their work in your gallery, you spend money advertising to attract people, you hold shows, you hold cocktail parties, you hold openings, and then suddenly you find out your artist is selling online direct, often at a lower price. How's that going to make you feel? You want to think about the big picture here. If you want to sell through galleries, you need to be thinking about long-term relationship versus short-term gain. Really top tier galleries will not allow their artists to sell direct. And if they do, they kick them out of the gallery. Now, if this gallerist, I can think of a gallery in New York, for instance, that, they're selling $50,000 and $100,000, $200,000 paintings. They're going to make your year for you if they're successful, but you could blow it all by selling direct because you decide to get greedy. And so that's something you got to be careful about. Now, some galleries will tolerate a little bit of direct sales in certain conditions. For instance, I have an artist friend who has a deal with his galleries that he will only offer things online in a daily painting environment that are unframed and that are under a certain size, maybe under 8 by 10 and within a certain price range. But the bigger things always go to the gallery, and he never sells direct in those cases. Most artists I know still don't sell too much online. Some do, but not a lot. In the grand scheme of things, it's not as many as you would think. We all hear about these big success stories, and we all think, well, that's going to happen to us. There are certainly ways to do it, and I teach that in some of my courses in my book. But selling from a gallery gives you an advantage because they are talking about you. They're building your customer base. They're building a collector base. They know the market. They're advertising and promoting, bringing people in. They're spending money. They're talking to customers. They're shipping paintings. They're collecting the money. They're dealing with refunds. They're selling. They're following up. And those things matter because you're going to have to do all of that yourself if you're selling directly. And then you're not doing what you should be doing, which is painting. That's how I feel about it. And when I'm in some galleries and they do a lot of work for me, and there's still work I have to do, like shipping and so on. But the one thing I would say is never, ever, ever, ever sell direct to a gallery's client. I was in a gallery show. I was only in this show for 2-3 weeks. I sold a painting, several paintings, but I sold a painting to this guy. And he contacted me on Instagram and he said, "Hey, I bought some paintings from you at the show. Do you have anything else I can see?" And so I sent him a note and I sent pictures and I sold him 3, 4, 5 other paintings. And when the money came in, I contacted the gallery and I told him, "Listen, even though the show was over, and even though technically I'm not in your gallery, and even though I don't technically owe you any money, I would not have that customer if it weren't for you. So I'm going to send you a commission." In my particular case, I gave an option. I said, "I'll send you a cash commission or I'll pay you in some other way," offered something to them, and they ended up picking one of the two. And they were happy that I did that. And they said, "Gee, nobody does that. You have integrity. We get screwed over by artists all the time." Now, I'll tell you another story. I was at a gallery in Tucson. I was sitting there meeting with the owner, and he said, "Do you mind if I take these paintings down while I'm talking to you?" I said, "Sure. Why are you taking them down?" He said, "Well, a guy walked into the gallery. He said, 'I love that painting, but here's how much I'm willing to pay for it.' I said, 'No.' The guy walked out. He contacted the artist direct. The artist called me and made up a story about why they needed that painting back. And then the guy ended up calling the gallery and said, 'Hey, just FYI, just want you to know I bought it direct from the artist for 50% off.'" So the gallery fired that artist, and the gallery told all his friends at other galleries in town that that artist had wronged him. And that gallery was sending back all the paintings and no longer representing that artist. And that artist is probably blackballed among those friends. You don't play those games. They're short-term thinking. They will hurt you. You know, the reality is that art galleries do a lot of work. Maybe they're not doing the work you think they should be doing, but they're doing all the work that I described. They're spending money. They're promoting you, or they should be promoting you. And ultimately, they will help you sell. Now, if they're not selling after a while, then have a discussion with them, move out of the gallery or something else, but don't violate them. That's tricky. So lots of things you can do to sell direct paintings or direct prints or other things, but you got to be really careful because some galleries look at that as poison and they don't want to deal with it. Just a thought. If you're going to do it, then maybe I have friends who are not in galleries at all and they do direct selling and they're very effective at it. So there's a lot of ways you can do it. So just consider the options because you don't want to hurt your reputation. I have stories of people who have done things like this 10 years ago, 15 years ago, that people still talk about, they still won't touch because they were burned. You don't want to be that person. Okay, that's today's Art Marketing Minute.
This has been the Marketing Minute with Eric Rhoads. You can learn more at artmarketing.com.
I want to thank our guests for today. It was a lot of fun learning about their trip. I hope you will consider taking some trips yourself. One of the trips you could take is to the Plein Air Convention. That's coming up in Denver. And we've now announced that C.W. Mundy's going to be there. Jane Seymour is going to be there. We've got a huge list of incredible artists, Michelle Dunaway, a lot of others, and you want to make sure that you come. This is a great place to learn how to be part of the Plein Air community. A lot of other things that I do that are part of that. We'll talk about that another time. It's been fun this week. You missed Watercolor Live, but you can join us next year. We'll talk about that sometime in the future. And please, 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 please come to Plein Air Live. You're going to love that. We're going to teach you all about plein air painting and landscape painting from some of the top masters in the world who do that. And that is a really terrific place. We got a whole lot more faculty that we're going to be announcing. And we're very excited about that. And we're also, I'm going to be doing segments on, you know, the kind of easels and how to pack your easels. I've got some new things I'm putting together for that. I'm actually reaching out to the easel companies, trying to get them all in so I can demonstrate the differences between them. It's going to be a great session. But come to Plein Air Live, you'll really enjoy it. I do a blog on Sundays. It's called Sunday Coffee, and you can find it at coffeewitheric.com and subscribe for free. I'm also on the air daily, every weekday, really, on Facebook and YouTube. My show is called Art School Live. Just go to YouTube and search Art School Live and then subscribe. We've got over 100,000 subscribers now. We're pretty excited about that. And we've had, probably over 1 million people view the program. We started that with COVID, and it has continued since then. Please give me a follow on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, etc. at Eric Rhoads. And that's me. I'm Eric Rhoads, the founder of Plein Air Magazine and host of Plein Air Live and Plein Air Convention. I will see you. Thanks for being here today. Get outside and paint. It's a big, big world, so go paint it. Bye-bye.
This has been the Plein Air Podcast with Plein Air Magazine's Eric Rhoads. You can help spread the word about plein air painting by sharing this podcast with your friends. And you can leave a review or subscribe on iTunes so it comes to you every week. And you can even reach Eric by email, eric@pleinairmagazine.com. Be sure to pick up our free ebook, 240 plein air painting tips by some of America's top painters. It's free at pleinairtips.com. Tune in next week for more great interviews. Thanks for listening.